Howdy folks, and welcome to Mingles with Jingles, episode 87. Yeah, I know. I can't believe it either. There must be better things that I can do with my time. Speaking of better things that I could be doing with my time, get a load of this. This is Armored Warfare from Obsidian Entertainment, new tank game that's due to go into beta test. Well, possibly by the end of this month. But certainly not that far away at all. There is a limited technical beta that is going to start running, and very, very, very limited technical beta that's going to start running on the 22nd of January for this. And hopefully not long after that, you, if you are one of the lucky few who get invited into the beta test, will be able to get your hands on it as well. 500,000 people have applied for beta keys for this game. I'm getting very excited about this. I mean, it's tanks, what's not to like? And unlike War Thunder and World of Tanks, it's modern tanks. The earliest level of tanks that you get in Armoured Warfare are going to be 1950 designs, all the way up to the present day. Shortly before Christmas, I actually spent over an hour on Skype talking to one of the senior producers from Armoured Warfare, asking him all sorts of questions, finding out all the details I could about this game. There is going to be a video on Armoured Warfare coming very, very, very soon. What you're looking at here is just background roll footage, but before too long I should be in a position to actually start showing you some gameplay. So fingers crossed for that. Armoured Warfare coming soon. Speaking of new games, Fractured Space has been going from strength to strength. The pace of development is getting pretty scary at the moment. It's literally every week there are new features and there's a new build of the game out. The latest build of the game allows you to customise your ship equipment loadouts. That's something that people have been waiting for a while. And I like the approach that they've taken. I'll give you an example. Let's have a look at the flagship. The flagship's default main weapon is its flak battery, but you can choose to replace the flak battery with a photonic charge launcher. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any better than the flak battery, it just works in a different way. Instead of blanketing an area with anti-shipping and anti-missile fire, it launches one single charge which explodes into a sort of wide area of effect detonation. So it achieves the same thing, it just does it in a different way. What that means is that you can choose to outfit your ship to reflect the way you prefer to play it. With a fully upgraded ship, you just have more options. It's not necessarily any better than a stock ship. And I do like this approach because it means you're never going to get into the situation that you get into in World of Tanks, for example, when you unlock the T-29 American Tier 7 heavy tank, but you haven't already gone down the American medium tank line, so you're playing that tank with a 76mm gun. Yeah, loads of fun. Instead, well, I'll give you an example. Here's the sniper. Its stock weapon is the long-range cannon, but there are two upgrades that you can have, and the last upgrade is the very long-range cannon. So if you do like the idea of staying at extreme range and just taking harassing fire at enemy ships, then equip the very long-range cannon. You won't do as much damage with it as you would the long-range cannon, but it allows you to play the ship the way that you prefer to play it. So unlocking the various different modules isn't going to give you a better ship than somebody who doesn't have those modules unlocked, but it does give you the option of playing the ship with a customised loadout that reflects the way that you prefer to play it. Now, while the Fractured Space servers are up all the time, and they do have American servers as well, Thursday night is the main playtesting night, and you can also take the opportunity to log on to their TeamSpeak channel and chat direct with the developers if you are playing on a Thursday. So details of that all in the video description. Now, you may remember another game that I've been banging on about in the past. It's a World War II Eastern Front-based, turn-based strategy game called Unity of Command. A great little game, and I've featured it in various episodes of Mingles with Jingles in the past. And I also did a Unity of Command giveaway for my 300,000 subscriber celebration. The developers were very, very kind enough to donate a whole bunch of Steam access codes for the game. Now, this is where things get interesting. One of the other things that I was giving away for 300,000 subscriber celebrations on YouTube was a whole bunch of books based on tanks and World War II in general and so on and so on. And one of the books that I was giving away was called Panzertruppen. It was part of a 2-volume set all about the operations of Germany's armoured forces in World War II. But I only had one of the 2-book set. Well, it turns out that Unity of Command's developers watch Mingles with Jingles, and they actually have the second volume. Not only that, they've got the first one as well, and they have sent me not just Panzertruppen Volume 1 and 2, but also another book, Tank Combat in North Africa, which I'm now going to give away to you guys. I really have to confess, they sent me these long before Christmas, but I've been hanging on to them because I wanted to read them, particularly the Tank Combat in North Africa book. It features all of the tank operations between February 1941 and June 1941, Operations Sonnenblume, Brevity, Scorpion and Battle Axe in the North African deserts during World War II. It's fascinating stuff. They're all written by the same guy, Thomas L. Jentz. He's the guy who also wrote the Panzertruppen books. What they've basically sent me here are 3 books with a combined value of over £130, and we're giving them away to you here in Mingles with Jingles. So this is courtesy of the developers of Unity of Command. Can't thank them enough for this. So I'm going to be giving them away as 2 prizes. The first prize will be the combined 2-volume set of Panzertruppen, and the second prize will be the Tank Combat in North Africa book. And all you have to do to enter is go to the link in the video description, enter your name and email address into the lottery draw, and by next week's Mingles with Jingles I will randomly pick a winner from everybody who stuck their name in the hat, and 2 of you are going to be walking away with some very, very, very expensive books about tanks, which is nice. So just to summarise and hopefully to head off some of the questions that I usually get asked whenever I do something like this, go to the link in the video description, enter your name and email address into the prize draw. Closing date will be Sunday next week. On Monday's Mingles with Jingles I will announce the winners. One of you will walk away with the 2-volume set of Panzertruppen. Second place will get the Tank Combat in North Africa book. Yes, I will post anywhere in the world, and all I need for now at the link in the video description is your name and your email address. All of this courtesy of the developers of Unity of Command, so thank you very much to them for that. Next up, since I just for once don't actually have anything better to talk about, yes, I know. Brace yourselves, make sure you're sitting down. I am going to answer some questions from last week's Mingles with Jingles. Spikier Spy was watching the Combat South Christmas fancy dress video that I put up over Christmas, and he wanted to know, Jingles, at Combat South, how often do you see open wound injuries caused by BBs? I'm looking at starting Airsoft myself, but squeezing an ordinary spot is painful enough, let alone squeezing out a 6mm BB from an open wound. He's talking about Airsoft, by the way, in case that wasn't immediately obvious. It's a fair question, I suppose. It's really not as bad as you might think. The worst injury I have ever seen playing Airsoft was a broken ankle, and that wasn't caused by getting shot at. That was caused by not looking where you were going while running through the woods and putting your foot in a rabbit hole. The worst injury I've ever seen as a direct result of somebody getting shot at was somebody took a burst in the face at point-blank range while playing at Combat South's urban site at Fort Woodley, and got one of their teeth shot out. But he wasn't wearing a mask. He was just wearing eye protection. Now, eye protection is the minimum basic level of protection required. And the eye protection that you wear must be certified to be able to take a point-blank range, full auto BB burst without shattering. Most of the stuff that people wear can take a shotgun blast without, any serious damage. But that's the minimum level of protection required. Combat South do highly recommend that you wear a full face mask, but they don't enforce it. And the reason they don't enforce it is because the legal power limit in the UK is deliberately set low enough so that they're not generally capable of breaking the skin. You're never going to be sitting there digging BBs out of wounds with a knife. The weapons are just not that powerful. Sometimes the skin will get broken if you take a hit at a close enough range, but we're not talking about BBs being embedded into your flesh or anything. You might bleed a little bit. You might get a very, very nasty welt. In fact, while I was recording that Christmas fancy dress video at Combat South, I did actually get hit a couple of times. I mean, you're wandering around with a dirty, great big orange please don't shoot me vest and you still get shot. That's the risk you take when you play Airsoft. And one of them was my own fault. There was a guy hidden behind a tree, and he just popped out to take a burst at somebody on the other side of the field. I was on his right-hand side, not paying attention to the guy who was there, and I crossed his line of fire just as he pulled the trigger. From a range of about 5 feet, he poured a burst right into the back of my head, just behind my ear. Holy shit, that hurt. It made me cry. It made me scream like a little girl, but it didn't do any lasting damage. It didn't cause any bleeding. I wasn't having to dig BBs out of my skull. The weapons are just not that powerful in the UK. The power limit in the UK is a muzzle velocity of no more than 350 feet per second with a 0.2 gram BB. If you were to play, for example, in America or Hong Kong or Japan, I think that the legal limits, and in America it probably varies from state to state, but you're looking at something like 450 feet per second muzzle velocity with a 0.2 gram BB. You get hit at point blank range with one of those, and yes, you're probably going to bleed, and you're probably going to bleed a lot, but in the UK, it's really not a problem. And if despite that you still have any concerns, well, don't play wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Wear a combat jacket, wear vests, wear a helmet, wear a full face mask. Just don't have any exposed skin that can get shot at. You'll still know when you've been hit. Trust me, you'll know, but it ain't going to break the skin. Another question that seemed very popular in last week's Mingles with Jingles was, Jingles, why don't you like the Star Wars prequels? Oh my god. I only have half an hour or so for Mingles with Jingles. I can't possibly give that question the answer it deserves, but I'll have a stab at it. I'll give you the budget version of why I despise the Star Wars prequels. Now, before the rant starts, okay, standard disclaimer applies. I'm not saying you're wrong if you like the Star Wars prequels. That's not the point at all. How much you enjoy a movie has very little to do with how good the movie is. I mean, there are all kinds of movies that are absolutely terrible that I adore. But the difference is I know I'm watching a bad movie. I'll give you a perfect example, actually. There's a movie called Plan 9 from Outer Space. Any movie buffs out there are probably already starting to laugh because they know exactly where this is going. Plan 9 from Outer Space was made in 1959 by a disaster of a director called Ed Wood. And it's universally regarded as the worst movie ever made. And it's so bad, it's magnificent. The plot involves a couple of aliens trying to take over the world, and they've had 8 attempts so far, and this is their 9th plan. So you can see where the title comes from. This is their 9th plan at taking over Earth, and this time they've decided they're going to resurrect the dead from a Hollywood graveyard and use them to take over the world. I mean, it barely even qualifies as a B-movie. But the plot alone isn't what makes Plan 9 from Outer Space such a train wreck of a movie. It's the details. It actually had quite a big star, a guy called Bela Lugosi, who was, I think he was a Hungarian actor. He was an immigrant to the USA, and he's the guy who played Dracula in some of the early Universal horror movies. I mean, he was a major, major star. Very, very famous. Unfortunately, that was a while before they made Plan 9 from Outer Space. Bela Lugosi hadn't worked in years. And Ed Wood just happened to bump into him one day and offered him the chance to get back into movies. So he was playing the bad guy. Unfortunately, Bela Lugosi died halfway through filming. So they had a bit of a problem. Well, they have to cast somebody else to replace Bela Lugosi's character. So Ed Wood cast his dentist. I'm not joking. He had nobody else. So he cast his dentist. Okay, well, fair enough. That's not so bad. Well, yeah, except Bela Lugosi was about 5'6", and the dentist was about 6'4". So they had the dentist, and it looked nothing like Bela Lugosi. I mean, you know, Bela Lugosi was this tiny little Hungarian immigrant with dark hair, and he was about 70 years old. The dentist was a 6'4", blonde-haired, I think of Germanic descent. And looked nothing whatsoever like him. So in order to try to disguise the fact that this was not actually Bela Lugosi anymore, they put him in a long black cape, and they had him hold the cape over his face. But he was still 6'4". It was just that's the kind of train wreck this movie is, and this is just one example of how magnificently shit Plan 9 from Outer Space was. But that's why I love it. Now, the Star Wars prequels. Oh, where do we start? There's a bunch of guys on YouTube called Red Letter Media, and I've been watching their movie reviews for years. They are absolutely hilarious. They're also very, very good movie reviewers, but the way that they do their reviews is really, really funny. And I highly recommend. I'll put a link to their YouTube channel and their website in the video description, because I'm going to be borrowing heavily from Red Letter Media to explain why it is I cannot stand the Star Wars prequels, because they have exactly the same opinion as me, and they really managed to summarise the points in a way that I really struggled to until I'd watched Red Letter Media's reviews and understood, oh yeah, that's what I meant, but I couldn't think of the way to say it that they could. So, number one, why the Star Wars prequels suck. They don't have a protagonist. What's a protagonist? Well, protagonist is the person that the movie's about. It's the person that the audience identifies with. It's the person that the audience follows throughout the movie. In Star Wars A New Hope, Episode 4, the protagonist was clearly Luke Skywalker. It was the hero's journey from farm boy to hero. Star Wars Episode 4, and to a lesser degree, all three of the original Star Wars movies were the story of Luke Skywalker's journey from farm boy to galactic hero, and along the way redeeming his father and bringing him back to the light side of the Force. Who's the protagonist of The Phantom Menace? Take your time, I'll wait. Remember, we're talking about the character that the audience identifies with and follows their journey throughout the movie. Take your time. There isn't one, is there? No, there isn't one. The movie does not have a protagonist. Now, you can have a movie without a protagonist, and it can still be a good movie. But generally speaking, when it's aimed at kids, you probably want to make the movie as easy to understand as possible and give them somebody that they can root for. The Phantom Menace doesn't have that. Hang on a minute, Jingles. Phantom Menace does have a protagonist. Anakin Skywalker. No. Anakin Skywalker is not the protagonist of The Phantom Menace. For a start, he's not in it until more than halfway through. And secondly, everything that happens to Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace happens by accident. He has no control over, with the possible exception of the pod racing scene. Everything that happens to Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace is an accident. Something that he has absolutely no control over. He's a bystander at best. Oh, but hang on a minute, Jingles, what about the big starfighter battle at the end where he blows up the droid control ship and saves the planet? Well, if he'd climbed into the starfighter with the intention of doing that, you might have had a point, but he didn't. He's hiding in the starfighter. The autopilot engages, flies him up into orbit. He has no control over any of that. This is stuff that's just happening to him. Luke Skywalker chose to jump into an X-Wing and go up against the Death Star. Luke Skywalker actually flew the bloody X-Wing. He chose to switch off his targeting computer. He chose to use the Force, and he became a hero because of it. Anakin Skywalker was hiding in a starfighter that accidentally activated and on autopilot flew him up to a droid control ship where he accidentally, because he didn't know how to fly the thing, ended up in the hangar, and then accidentally, because he's just pressing buttons at random, blows up the bloody power core and then accidentally survives. It's just, there's nothing heroic about it. Can you see the difference here between Anakin Skywalker, who is just a klutz that gets lucky, and Luke Skywalker, who is a hero? This is not rocket science. You can see the difference between the two characters and see why Luke Skywalker is a protagonist and Anakin Skywalker is a tourist. So there is no protagonist in The Phantom Menace, which is, again, you can have a movie without a protagonist in it, but generally speaking, when you're aiming your movie at kids, you probably want to make it as easy for them to follow as possible. And The Phantom Menace doesn't do that. Now, the other two prequels do have a protagonist, and it is Anakin Skywalker. We follow his journey from dick to even bigger dick. And that's kind of a problem as well. It's kind of difficult to root for him, because he goes from being whiny, petulant, arrogant teenage dick to whiny, petulant, teenage, arrogant, baby-murdering, wife-killing dick. So, yeah, that's a bit of an issue as well. Speaking of the characters in the Star Wars prequels, and this is where I really start getting into my stride, well, let's just flip this on its head for the moment. Let's take a look at the characters from the original movies. And I'm going to describe characters from the original movies without telling you what they wear, how they talk, or what they do. Right? And we'll see how long it takes before you know who I'm talking about. Okay, character number 1. He's a charming, roguish scoundrel. Oh, Han Solo. Yep, easy, isn't it? Okay, character number 2. It's fun, this, isn't it? Here we go. Character number 2. He's young, headstrong, brash, idealistic. Oh, Luke Skywalker. There you go. It's not hard, is it? It's easy. Now let's try doing that with some of the characters from The Phantom Menace. And remember, you have to do this without saying what they wear, what their job is, or how they talk. Let's see you describe Queen Amidala. It's not easy, is it? And it's not easy because Queen Amidala is not a character. She's a wardrobe. Try it with any of the characters. Darth Maul, Darth Sidious, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Take your pick. Any of the characters in The Phantom Menace and try to describe them without saying what they wear, what they do, or how they sound. And you are going to struggle. And that is a hallmark of shitty character design. There is one character in The Phantom Menace that you can quite easily describe without saying how they sound, what they wear, or what they do. And that's Jar Jar Binks. And if the only character, well, he's not just the only character in the entire movie that you can describe in that way, that means he's the only character in the entire movie. Everybody else is just a vehicle for spouting lines of dialogue or carting pretty costumes around from one scene to the next. And if Jar Jar Binks, right, if that joke is the only actual character in the movie, you're in serious trouble. Oh, come on, Jingles, don't be so hard on Jar Jar, he's there for the kids. And you don't complain about the Ewoks, I mean, they're the same. Whoa, hang on a minute, that's fighting talk. Sorry, but Jar Jar makes the Ewoks look like Shaft. But, you know, I'm glad you brought up the topic of kids' movie. Right, we're going to address that in slightly more detail, okay? So, The Phantom Menace is a kids' movie, so that means it's okay, does it? Alright, okay. What's The Phantom Menace about again? Let's just have a look at the opening scroll of Star Wars. Let's see what Star Wars is about. It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against an evil galactic empire. During the battle, Rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, an armoured space station with enough power to destroy an entire planet. Whoa, this sounds good. Civil war, spaceships, hidden bases, victory, evil galactic empire, armoured space station, spies, entire planets getting destroyed. Sounds like this is going to be a good movie. Let's have a look at the opening crawl of The Phantom Menace. Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo, while the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of... Kids movie, yeah? Right. You know, I could go on for hours about what a terrible series of movies the Star Wars prequels are. I could go on about how disastrous an actor Hayden Christensen is. I could go on about how the terrible script and dialogue made great actors like Christopher Lee, Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor sound like turkeys. But there just isn't enough time in the day. What it all boils down to is this. George Lucas is capable of making great movies. He has made great movies. He's made American Graffiti, which is an absolute classic. He's made Star Wars, which is a fantastic movie. But when he was making Star Wars and when he was making American Graffiti, there were people standing over him who had the power to say no and mean it. People who could say, no, George, that's a terrible idea. Think of something else. When he made the Star Wars prequels, he made them all with his own money, and he surrounded himself with yes men, and he surrounded himself with people like his producer, Rick McCallum, whose job it was to fire anybody who said no, George. When George Lucas made the Star Wars prequels, he went out and he hired some of the finest creative minds in Hollywood, and then he didn't listen to a single word they said, and if they disagreed with him, he had Rick McCallum fire them. And that is why the Star Wars prequels suck, because making a movie is a collaborative effort. I put videos up on YouTube, 20 to 40 minutes long at the most. I do it all myself, and I still get stuff wrong. When you're trying to take that same approach to making a multi-million-dollar Hollywood blockbuster extravaganza series of movies, well, you're going to end up with rubbish like The Phantom Menace. Well, that's it for this week, folks. Don't forget, prize draw, chance to win some very expensive books on tanks, courtesy of the developers of Unity of Command, details in the video description. And if you found my rant on the Star Wars prequels amusing, then I do highly recommend you check out Red Letter Media on YouTube, or just go direct to their own website where you can watch their own movie reviews, particularly even if you don't agree with my assessment of the Star Wars prequels, and if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But the reviews that they've done of the Star Wars prequels are absolutely hilarious, and I do recommend everybody watches them. So that's it from me, as always. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.